Good evening and welcome back to the Masonic Roundtable, a weekly hangout where Masons from around the world get together to talk about Masonic news and opinions in a friendly and social manner. The standard disclaimer applies. The thoughts and opinions expressed here are solely the opinions of the participants and do not represent any Grand Lodge statements or positions. Please make sure you keep your conversations open for the public and on the level. Tonight, we are soliciting questions and comments from you via Twitter at Mason Roundtable and or with the hashtag TMR episode 36 or on the Facebook event page. Quick round of introductions. My name is John Ruark, past master of the Patriot Lodge number 1957 in Fairfax, Virginia. I'll hand it off to Robert Johnson.
Brother Robert Johnson here from Waukegan Lodge number 78 in Waukegan, Illinois, where I am the senior warden.
Huzzah. Nick Johnson.
I'm Nick Johnson. I'm a past master of Corinthian Lodge number 67 in Big Time, Farmington, Minnesota.
Great. And last but not least for now, Jason Richards.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight. My name is Jason Richards, and I'm the senior deacon of Acacia Lodge number 16 in Big Time, Clifton, Virginia.
Big Time. Very nice. There can only be one Big Time.
I know. Nick's got that forever.
Alrighty.
We'll call yours Good Old Clifton.
Good old
Clifton, Virginia. Yeah.
Very, very nice. Let's see, Masonic news. I shared on the Facebook page that, according to Arturo de Hoyos' Facebook page, which if you have not followed Art de Hoyos, definitely worth checking out. He's just not only a wealth of Masonic knowledge, but he's also the Grand Librarian of the House of the Temple in D.C. Did I get that title right? Something
Maybe.
like that. But yeah, he does work at the House of the Temple for the Scottish Rite in downtown D.C. So he's kind of an expert on this stuff, has lots of good historical research. But the recent thing that caught my eye this week was on this past weekend. He talked about a guy trying to sell on the History Channel show The Pawn Stars a nice collection of Knight Templar regalia, aprons, sash, sword, those kind of things. But this was the old style from the 1800s, so if you haven't seen those, go check that out. I have a link already in the show notes for this episode where you can go and watch that episode online. It's actually within the first 3 minutes, so it's very easy to get right to. Nick, did you want to talk about the Children's Hospital?
Sure. Well, I don't know if many of our viewers know, but Minnesota Masonic Charities is a fairly large donor to the University of Minnesota, especially its medical research and medical hospitals. And in honor of a $25 million gift from Minnesota Masonic Charities, they are renaming the University of Minnesota Amplatz Children's Hospital to the University of Minnesota Masonic Children's Hospital. And the Masons here have raised, I think, $75 million. So we're the largest donor to the University of Minnesota. So it's been a really a proud day for all of us in Minnesota to continue the work of finding both cures for cancer and also to help children in need. So it's been a really great day to be reading all the news stories about this.
Yeah, that's great to be recognized for such a charitable donation. Very good.
Hey, we've got another guest.
The Juan Sepulveda. And
Good evening, brothers. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. As you can suspect, this awkward picture is because I'm using my phone. In the meantime, my computer's not cooperating, so carry on.
Very good. All right. Well, Juan, if you are prepared for, I think you're the first on our list here.
Well, we should explain a little bit about it first.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's definitely what I was going to do. So tonight's episode, the reason we're jumping right into it, is we have a lot of material to cover. We are finally talking about logic. We've talked about grammar in the past. We talked about rhetoric, and now the last of the trivium is logic. And so trying to,
tripod of a three-way.
yes, the three-way that is the trivium. We do want to cover, and being an engineer, being very left-brained, I really like logic in general, so I was very excited about this show. One thing to make logic kind of interesting, there's a million ways you could go with this, but I wanted to share a website, which is already in the show notes, so if you wanted to follow along, by all means, check it out. But this is yourlogicalfallacyis.com. And what we will do here is we will attempt to go round robin and very briefly cover each of these about 25 different logical fallacies, because these are based on Socratic and Platonic kind of debate methodologies in which they point out some of the logical errors made in reasoning. And so if you're trying to use rhetoric to persuade someone, you would rather have a logical argument rather than a logical fallacy in order to make yourself not look so stupid. So, you know.
That said, even if you argue something poorly, it doesn't mean that it's not true. But we'll get to that in a little bit.
Someone's been doing his homework. We lost one. So what we'll do is we will start with, let's see, let me pull up my notes here. Let's start with Jason, and yours is appeal to authority.
Appeal to authority. I was actually pretty excited about getting this one, just because it wasn't some of the other weird ones. No, I'm kidding. Appeal to authority is the fallacy that when you are making an argument, you say, well, some expert thinks this way, or some highly influential person agrees with my premise, therefore my premise must be true. And the thing that I kept coming back to is the Leo Taxil hoax. And it sort of fits into this realm of logical fallacy because, of course, Leo Taxil made up a statement attributed to Albert Pike, who was very influential in developing the Scottish Rite ritual, saying that Masons worship Satan. Now, it doesn't fit directly into appeal to authority because, of course, we know Taxil made it up. However, even if that had been true, simply the idea that some person in leadership in the Masonic fraternity thinks that it's okay as a Mason to worship Satan doesn't mean that that is a part of our dogma and a part of what we do as Masons. Bringing that down to the micro lodge level, you can take a look at just saying, well, I believe we should raise dues this year, and there are several people at the Grand Lodge level that think dues should be raised across the board, and so that's why we should raise dues as well. And that's just another example in the lodge of how you're attempting to lend credence to your own argument by saying, well, all these other people who are really smart are on board with it as well, so you should listen to me.
Very interesting. Thank you. The next one is Juan with the logical fallacy of the straw man.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Yes.
We didn't do our usual sound check before.
Well, we did.
Well, oh, yeah. Well, didn't wait for me now. All right. Well, the straw man fallacy. As some of you who have me as a personal friend on Facebook have seen lately, I've put some controversial questions out there, postings that kind of challenge people's views and beliefs, just as a way to get a good conversation going. Well, if you paid attention to some of them, you'll find the straw man scattered throughout. And the straw man basically is creating an argument other than the one that you have positioned that is similar enough to confound people and confuse them and distracts from the original argument. So, for example, first let me tell you where the name comes from. The straw man gets its name from a practice that knights or jousting man would do, in which they would create almost like an effigy made out of straw of their opponent. And instead of actually practicing by fighting the actual opponent, they're fighting an effigy of the opponent. Well, granted, it's not going to be as easy to knock down from the horse the real opponent. It's easier for you to create an argument that looks enough like your opponent, and then you just go at him. When done correctly, it is very effective in distracting the conversation or changing the path of the dialogue. And here's where the importance of studying these things comes from. If you don't recognize it when it happens, then you fall prey to it. You follow the straw man that the other person created. And very briefly, I thought of an example of, for example, if you believe that wine or other libations have a place in lodge, not necessarily the lodge room, but perhaps within the facilities of the lodge for table lodges or things of the sort. In some of our states, we're dry. In Florida, we can't even have wine in the premises. If I present an argument saying, well, I believe that we should be able to exercise our prudence and our what's the other?
Temperance. There we go.
Temperance. Thank you. We can, in order for us to exercise temperance, we should be allowed to have a social wine when we're having our dinner. And then the other person, when they hear that, they can say, "Oh yeah, well, we can have all the debauchery that you want if we look at other organizations that allow wine to have, that allow their members to have wine in the premises. They have to deal with drunkenness. They have to deal with losing inhibitions. Is that what we want to do in this lodge? Is that what we're going to succumb to?" And they're creating a similar yet different and menacing argument that, if done effectively, is going to distract from the conversation.
Wow. Good example. Next one is Nick Johnson with No True Scotsman.
No true Scotsman. What? Ah, okay.
Oh, why did he get that one?
I know. It's because you heard I can do accents. Okay, so no true Scotsman
Yar.
is this. You say, all of us know that Scotsmen love haggis. And then some lady will always point out, "Oh, but me Uncle Artie, he hates haggis." Well, of course, we all know that the true Scot loves haggis. So he's not true Scot. And that's what it is. There you go. What it does is it says that it moves the goalposts, and most of mine are moving the goalposts. That's what we call it. And so what it does is it takes the argument and says, no, not sufficient enough. You have to keep going. And so in this case, what you're doing is you're saying, well, we all know that real guys do this. So we see it all the time on Masonic message boards. Well, he's not a true Mason, is he? I mean, we all know, and you sit there, and it's especially jurisdictional stuff. It's just like, well, and so yeah, there you go.
That's funny. Yeah, the jurisdictions definitely apply to that. That's funny. All right, Robert, let's talk about black or white.
Black or white. So this
They're good cookies.
What? Wait, one
Sorry,
more time.
those are black and whites. I'm sorry.
Oh, black and white. So black and white is essentially presenting an argument that says there's only two outcomes for something or two choices, when in actuality there are millions, bazillions, thousands, 5, 10, whatever it is. A Masonic example would be saying, look, you're either, and this is, I've heard somebody say this, you're either York right or you're Scottish right. So in that instance, you look at it and you say, well, you can take it either way. You can say that Blue Lodge Masonry is York right, and so somebody will say, well, you're either York right or you're Scottish right, or if you're involved in one of the organizations and they want you and they're arguing for you to be part of their organization, they say, look, you're either Scottish right or York right. And most of the guys I know, they always say, you can't put me in that corner. They didn't fall for it. But that's black or white. You pick one or two when in actuality those are not the only two options or endpoints.
So
Or
you
that they're
might
not
say
mutually
you're a jet,
exclusive.
right? Yeah.
What did you say, Nick?
You know, if you're a jet forever, right? Jets versus sharks.
Nice.
There you go.
I want to
My
live
question
in
is, then,
America.
what do you say about Shriners? You're either York Rite or Scottish Rite.
Hey, I have no comment. I'm kidding.
Alrighty.
At one point, you had to be Scottish, right? Wouldn't you?
No, you had to either be Knights Templar or 32nd degree. You could go either way and or both.
Okay.
But they took out that requirement a good 10 years or so ago.
To be at least a master mason.
Yeah.
Right.
So far.
In most jurisdictions.
All right. My topic, my logical fallacy is ambiguity. What is ambiguity?
No, you should be good at this one.
Oh,
But I
thanks.
won't say why.
It's about stuff and things and, But basically, it's when you use the nuances of language primarily to mislead or misrepresent the truth. Some examples are, in this example, well, if when the judge asked the defendant, why haven't you paid his parking fines, he said, well, it said fine for parking on the sign. Get it? Because it's fine for parking, even though that's not the true intent of the word. And so my Masonic example is when one point that I mentioned in a previous episode, specifically the one on charity, was that charity itself has a double meaning, and that the meaning of charity, as kind of referenced in 1 Corinthians 13:13, is about if you look at the King James version, it says about there's faith, hope, and charity, and above all these is charity. So that has been taken Masonically. Often you'll hear people say, well, that's proof that Masons are charitable. However, if you look at other more recent translations of that same verse, 1 Corinthians 13:13, you'll see it's been primarily translated as love. And so we're using the benefit of an old translation of charity. We're using a new translation of charity to say, look, we're charitable and look at all these good things Masons do, when in fact the actual reference is meaning charity as in altruistic love.
Which we can show with money.
Yes, with a lot of money. Let's go back to Juan for false calls.
Okay, for false cause, this is almost as a category for different fallacies. You can pick a fallacy that falls within this category, but basically it is a fallacy that attributes something to a cause erroneously. So one that I really like is post hoc ergo propter hoc, which basically says, well, when we did this, this happened. Therefore, this caused this. And we see that in our daily life all the time. Correlation doesn't mean causation. Just because two things show a similar pattern, it doesn't mean that one caused the other. And for an example of that, I was thinking about when people say that the participation of the younger men in our fraternity has declined in correlation to the increase in things to do. So the more internet access we have, when we only had 3 channels on the TV, there was more participation within the lodge. Therefore, this increase in options is what's caused the decline in participation in the lodge. And we can't, I don't think that anybody could prove that.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's go to Jason to discuss the fallacy.
a fallacy. It's redundantly repetitive. We love it. If nothing else, Masons love like putting in extraneous arcane language into everything. So the fallacy is something I've hinted at before. Essentially, it states that if someone is making a claim, and in the process of making said claim, they actually used fallacious logic, it doesn't automatically invalidate the claim. So, if someone is if there's a lodge instructor of work who is talking about ritual, and he's saying, well, you know what, the Grand Lodge of D.C. actually does it this way, and the Committee on Work in Virginia has been considering, moving it to this way. So, it would probably be a good idea for once that gets passed for us to start doing it this way. He in a sense is appealing to authority there and saying, well, these guys think it's a good idea. They haven't passed anything yet, but it's something we should be thinking about. He's committing a fallacy there. However, it doesn't necessarily mean that his claim is invalid and that it's a bad idea just simply for the fact that he's arguing it poorly. Mm-hmm. And I had a hard time coming up with a concrete example of this because it's just all about common sense. Yes, the persuasiveness of an argument rests both on the audience as well as the ability of the argumentor to utilize rhetoric, but at the same time, in a lot of instances, truth is truth, and regardless of how that is argued, it's not going to make a difference as far as the validity of the claims go.
Mm-hmm. All right, Nick, you're next with genetic.
Ooh, genetics. I'd love to talk about this. Well, you see, Mendelbrot, or whatever his name was, came up with genetics. Oh, this kind of genetics. Never mind.
When two single helixes love each other very much.
And they spread their T, G, C, and A's all over. It's beautiful. Okay,
We're
so
have
this
to censor
one,
the show now.
I know. Let me tell you. Beep, 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 beep. So this is a fallacy that's based around where the information is coming. So it's a type of ad hominem attack where if somebody's being attacked, what they'll do is say, well, you can't believe the information because, well, look at those guys. That's what they're saying. So, oftentimes you'll see a politician, saying, you can't trust what you read in the papers if you know what I mean. So that's the kind of thing. And so I was trying to think of a good example, and one of them is, we always kind of tease past masters because they're always, opinionated, supposedly, like the two that are on this show. And let's see if I can find it for you.
Well, I think.
And, yeah, exactly. Well, that's how I start all my sentences. Isn't that how you do it, John? I mean,
of course.
So here you go.
Yes.
There you go. There you go. So, that's pretty much what it is. So there you go. And for all you podcast listeners, maybe you should check out the video.
Oh,
because that was an amazing meme.
It's probably one of my favorite Masonic memes.
We may have to put that on the show notes.
Oh,
yeah,
nice.
pretty much.
Yep.
All right, Robert, your next logical fallacy is begging the question.
Oh, please question, please. Begging the question is a circular argument. Essentially, it's claiming that something is right because that same something says it's right. It would be like if John said, I'm the foremost expert on acacia wood because I wrote a book about acacia wood that says I'm the foremost expert.
Nice.
In the Masonic realm, you might see this. Sometimes we have heavy religious areas of the country, like the Bible Belt, right? So you will maybe encounter something like somebody says the Holy Bible is God's Word because it says it is in the Bible. Is that a fallacy? Is it not? I mean, that falls into a religious belief, but you get the idea. It's a circular argument where it goes around in a circle.
Yeah, and I mean that gets to the point of faith versus logic, etc., which is another topic entirely.
It's a whole other topic, but you get the idea. Like I
Mhm.
said, John wrote a book on wood and said, "I'm the expert, and that's why I'm the expert." So that's your fallacy.
You see this a lot these days with people who quote themselves.
Oh my God.
One of my biggest things I see on Facebook, and I'm just like, ah!
My eyes got so big when you said that. Yeah.
Wonderful.
It's a large fallacy.
It is. It's a huge fallacy. All right, so my next logical fallacy is the anecdotal evidence. So basically what this means is when you have heard an example of something being true, therefore that's proof that it's true. So the example that's shown on the site is, well, because my grandfather lived to be 100 and he smoked 6 packs a day, therefore smoking is okay. I try to think about
Notice that Jason said that.
Yes, Jason did. That chain smoker he is. But the one thing that Jason has said on previous shows is that when you're discussing the argument of lodge membership, that there's examples of but I've heard that this lodge is having an increase in membership. I'm hearing that there are a lot of young Masons joining over here. Great, they are anecdotal evidences. However, as a whole, Masonry is declining. So that's while anecdotally that may be true, as a whole, that's not an actual logical argument for proof. All right. Burn.
Oh, gloves are off.
All right. And on to one for appeal to emotion.
Okay, well, appeal to emotion. And appeal to emotion, just like the previous one that I discussed, can be considered one of those that has several categories. It's a category under which many more fallacies can fall. Because the appeal to emotion, it could be an appeal to pity. It can be an appeal to love, an appeal to all kinds of different emotions. And in this fallacy, you try to make an argument. That is first going to be trying to tug at your emotions to convince you to do something or agree with something. And the example that I found, let's say in the lodge, they're considering making in the officer line, there is someone who becomes he is the senior warden, for example, and you can tell that he is not good with his memory work. He hasn't done proficiency in one thing or another, and you're trying to make a case to the brothers that maybe we should make him go to the east. I think this is a brother that he has left. He has dedicated a lot of years to the lodge. He's really nice, and he's done a lot of effort, thereby pulling at the strings, and then saying he should be the next worshipful master. When, in some of our opinions, you should consider that it shouldn't be just I'm so sorry that he's, it's not pity the category by which you move someone to the east. It should be by the qualification of them to actually lead within the lodge.
Mm-hmm. Good example. All right, on to Jason with the logical fallacy of slippery slope.
So, slippery slope fallacy is the idea that you take a data point and then extrapolate it ad absurdum, which means that you extrapolate it out using loose connectors to the point where the entire premise just becomes completely absurd. And one that I thought of kind of revolves the idea of one-day conferrals. Some people call those Blue Lodge or blue plate specials. And one of the issues that some people have with one-day conferrals is that new Masons really don't learn the ritual with one-day conferrals. So a slippery slope fallacy regarding one-day conferrals will say, well, if we continue to do conferrals in which new Masons don't learn ritual, then we keep doing them and keep getting more popular. Soon, nobody's going to know the ritual, and because of that, Masonry is just going to die. And that's kind of ridiculous. Because if nothing else, there needs to be a small group of people to put on those one-day conferrals who know the ritual. So, it might be very, very small, but Masonry won't die.
Ever.
Ever.
Nice. All right. The next logical fallacy is Nick with tu quoque.
Oh, thank you for this French one. And the thing is, like, when I first looked at it, I was like, the pronunciation. I wonder if I'm supposed to say it in the French way. So it's tu cocu or in tu coque. I don't know. And so anyway, this one is the appeal to hypocrisy. So let's say you're chatting with somebody and they're like, well, you're just being a hypocrite, and they're being a hypocrite too. So here we go. I have an example for you. This one is called, and so the lady says, how do you like my new hat? And the Sutherland Highlander says, by Jove. Oh, wait, he's supposed to be saying it this way. By Jove, what extraordinary headwear you women do wear. And so there you go.
Because
I know, I just keep doing that terrible Scottish accent. It's just getting worse.
all of your accents are the same.
I know, they all sound just terrible today. But anyway, just today. They're always awesome. Anyway, so this one is, it would be like if a grandmaster comes in and sees, somebody, or, well, let's not say grandmaster, grand officer of some kind goes in and sees these really beautiful, resplendent aprons and says, my goodness, you guys wear such shiny regalia in this lodge. He's blinged out, so that's what I had for my Masonic example of that one. So
very cool. The next logical fallacy is Robert Johnson with appeal to nature.
Oh man, so this one is everywhere. You see it on commercials. You guys will, if you guys are on Facebook, you see it every single day. It is the idea that something is good because it is quote unquote natural. So, maybe the idea started in the 80s and 90s with hair care products, all natural hair care products. This stuff is good because it comes from nature. It comes from nature. There's no chemicals in it. It's always good.
Wasn't the 80s the perm generation? Just saying.
I maybe. In that case, that is not natural at all. But the idea is that if something is natural, it's inherently right. So the idea behind the reason why this is erroneous is because there are a multitude of things that are natural that are not always right. Acting on sexual behaviors, murder, all these things, those are extremes examples of things that happen naturally. Doesn't make them okay. A Masonic example that runs dangerously close to obligations, but something that would say, yeah, I slept with her, but it was only natural, even if she was the junior steward's sister. Obviously, it's an erroneous argument on both cases.
Mm-hmm.
Just because something is natural doesn't make it okay.
There you go.
That's what I have.
Alrighty. My next logical argument is the Texas sharpshooter. This was kind of an interesting one. Basically, the analogy used here is where you cherry pick a data cluster to suit your argument, or find a pattern to fit your own presumption or bias.
Like the fact that Masonry's dying.
Right. And so I will prove that by saying, no. But I think the analogy is really funny because it takes the analogy of a guy with too much time on his hand out in Texas just shooting at the broadside of a barn, and after about a couple thousand rounds, he notices that a lot of the bullet holes are clumped together. So what he does is he walks up to his barn, finds the groups that are closest together, and draws a bullseye over top of those. See? What a great shot I am, right? Because I found data to support my argument, right? An extreme example of this is, let's talk about membership. Why not? It seems to be the one I use for most of my examples. Using the extreme case of the Texas sharpshooter argument, you could say, well, if I look at all the membership numbers every year in the United States leading up to 1959, boy, we're on an insurgence of members. It's great. We have lots of people. So if those trends continue, we're going to have a gajillion members here by 2015, right? But you're only looking at that small data set in time, which 1959 was the highest peak of United States Mason membership numbers. So just focusing on the data that supports your claim without looking at the entire spectrum or the entire proof, right? Because it can't be repeated. That's the other thing. Is yes, that claim may be true for this small subset, but it can't be repeated over time. All right. Back to Juan for the gambler's fallacy.
Oh yeah, I forgot that one. The gambler's fallacy. What I gather from this one is when you attribute some sort of randomness or almost let me put one that you can identify with. Has it ever happened to you that you go to a casino and you sit on that chair and you put some coins and you pull shing shing, and the numbers are supposed to be rolling randomly, but somehow you feel that you're almost there. You're very close to actually, turning the wheel and getting all sevens. Well, that same mentality applied to real life. When someone, for example, keeps on doing something the same way, expecting a different outcome, feeling, oh, no, we got to do this a couple more times because I know we're almost there. We're gonna do this. My love affair with pancake breakfast is my Masonic example for this. I've had I've seen in lodges where there's a pancake breakfast organized, and the first time it's not really a financial success. A lot of brothers put a lot of time and effort into putting it together, and financially didn't do much. It didn't bring much people from the community, so it wasn't a great success. But they continue to do it, and continue to do it, and continue to do it in the same kind of way, feeling that it's a matter of, luck. And eventually, there's going to be a flock of people coming. All these petitions are going to come out of a pancake breakfast, and that is, my friend, a gambler's fallacy.
Very nice. Jason, your next logical fallacy is ad hominem.
Hooray! So
well, you give it to the person less qualified to actually answer.
No, I mean, I absolutely love the ad hominem fallacy is hilarious because it's character assassination at its very best. You basically say, well, I know this guy's making an argument, but he's a jerk who doesn't really know what he's doing, and that's why you really shouldn't listen to a single thing he says. And I was going to say that about John Ruark, actually. He's convinced that Masonry is dying, it's on its last leg, but he's not credible, considering he's left-brained. He doesn't look at the data very well. He's got no imagination and artistic ability to see the fact that Masonry is going to rebound. And after all that, he's also a jerk. So you really shouldn't listen to anything that John Ruark says whatsoever. Which is why his argument that Masonry is declining to its inevitable end is just complete bumpkiss, and you should never listen to what he says on TMR again. You can listen to what I say, because I know this guy in the Grand Lodge who thinks like I'm really cool. He may even be a past Grand Master. He thinks I'm really cool. So you should listen to what I say instead of what John says.
I saw you furiously writing after my attack, so I expected that to occur. Nice.
No,
All right.
actually, I was writing something down under another fallacy and then realized it didn't speak to the fallacy at all, so I crossed it back out.
So you had a fallacy. Got it.
A fallacious fallacy.
All right, Nick Johnson. Let's talk about your logical fallacy is personal incredulity.
All right, personal incredulity,
Sure, we'll go with
or
that.
also argument from ignorance, is the idea that something that's too hard to understand obviously can't be true. And I'm just going to say it without saying it, but a certain warming of a certain celestial body, some people take as true or not true. And so I'm just going to leave it at that. Lighten up the board. I feel it now. I'm sure Facebook is like broken now because I just said that. But let me try and think of a Masonic answer so I can calm everybody down. 'Cause I'm sure they've gone and blown a gasket or a fuse or what have you. So I was thinking about it, and it was kind of like, why should I get involved in the Scottish Rite? I've looked at Morals and Dogma, and that book is just so hard to get through. Have you read that thing? It reads like a snooze fest.
It makes
it's
the King
obviously
James Bible look like a kid's book.
They could fit like 3 in there, honestly. And how many commas does the guy use? So obviously, the Scottish Rite is just too hard for us regular Masons to have to join. So I'm just gonna stick to what I know.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, you can only be York Rite or Scottish Rite.
Exactly.
One or the
Now
other.
Let me pull on my suspenders.
Nice.
Because if
There
it
we
ain't
go.
York, it ain't right.
What did you say, Robert? What did you say
What?
about your suspenders?
I said they're Shriner suspenders.
Oh, Shriners.
Yeah, Schreider suspenders.
And you heard it here first. Nick Johnson said Masons are causing global warming.
And now Facebook has exploded. I can
It's from
hear
all the
Zuckerberg-
pancake breakfasts.
Of course.
Yeah, exactly. Zuck
All right.
is out there right now going, how did they break my system? My beautiful system. Masons.
Robert Johnson, your logical fallacy is the loaded question.
All right, so loaded question. Basically, this takes place a lot of the time. You'll see it in public debates. Somebody will say something, the other guy is going to say, he'll ask the other guy a question, or the audience, or whoever a question, basically to invoke an emotional response, often putting the recipient of the question on the defensive. So the other guy gets forced into defending his character rather than answering a question or continuing a debate. For instance, it's kind of hard to come up with a Masonic example for this for me. I'm just not that smart. But if I thought maybe, for instance, we've seen it before where maybe the stewards, many cases the stewards in most lodges do the KP, they do the kitchen guys. And here in Illinois, we let them go just before the close of a meeting so that they can retire and start cleaning up the kitchen. Sometimes after a meeting's over, they just leave. So maybe an example of this would be before they leave in the lodge room, somebody stands up and says something like, what did I write here? I was wondering if the stewards were going to stay and clean up the kitchen tonight, while the stewards have been known to just cut out. They're forced to kind of deal with something. Maybe it's a logical fallacy because they are extenuating circumstances why they can't stay, or it depends on all that kind of thing. But really it invokes, it's asking a question that invokes an emotional response out of somebody and often derails them, because it makes them look irrational too, if they're forced to essentially defend some part of either their character or very similar to, it could lead right into where Jason Richards was talking about, when John being a total jerk writing a book about acacia wood.
Well, interestingly enough, on one of the earlier shows, we did talk about the idea of background checks as being weighed by several different Grand Lodges as being mandatory for petitioners, and several of us, myself included, went on to agree with the idea that background checks would be a good thing, and we had one brother who's a Masonic writer who's a phenomenal writer, give a very good argument as to why they shouldn't be necessary. But in the beginning of his argument, he said, stop being so stuck up and snooty, and that's actually an example of that fallacy, saying, well, this is just your own arrogance, when that was something that I don't think had crossed any of our minds in the first place. And that's no disrespect to that particular author. He's a fantastic guy and an amazing author. But it's just something interesting that we had picked up from one of our earlier shows.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and in that case, it may have been used to get your attention.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Okay. My next logical fallacy is the middle ground. And when faced with two choices, one of which probably being concrete and immovable, an often ploy or compromise is to, well, I'll meet you in the middle. But yet the middle ground may not be even possible at all. So the example kind of here is, well, if one person says vaccinations cause autism, but the other one says, well, no, scientific evidence has shown that's not true, then so, okay, how about sometimes it causes autism? Well, no, scientifically, it shows that's not true. And so one thing I tried to think of from a Masonic perspective are some of the absolutes that we have in Masonry. And so one example could be with conspiracy theorists. And by the way, this whole show could really be done to disprove a lot of the theories that conspiracy theorists have. If only Wake Up Sheeple would provide a video response to this, that'd be interesting. Now, the example I chose is, well, sometimes you might read on the internet, well, all Masons are atheists. They can't be Christian, right? And then, or they can't believe in a God. Well, then the counter argument is, well, no, it's part of our requirements to join that no atheist can be a Mason, that you must believe in a supreme being. Oh, and by the way, it's been documented throughout history. Many pastors and rabbis and so forth have actually been men of the cloth and Freemasons. And so then the counter argument would be meeting in the middle. Well, okay, some Masons are atheists. Well, not quite, because the requirement is you can't be an atheist. So
only in France.
Right. Yeah. I had to pick my example carefully because there are some requirements that are hard and fast in the U.S. that may not apply otherwise. All right. The next logical argument is back to Juan, I believe, for
Bandwagon.
bandwagon. Let's talk about this bandwagon, Juan.
The bandwagon fallacy, also known as ad populum, is when an argument claims that because the majority of people think one way, it must be true. Or they try to substantiate their claims by citing that a lot of people think in that way. And just because an opinion is popular doesn't necessarily make it true. And one example, even though the majority of us are Luciferian devil worshippers, that doesn't mean, one accusation that I come across all the time is like, are you really a Mason? Like, aren't Masons, don't they worship Lucifer? And no, there might be a lot of people out there making noise about that claim, but even if it were the most popular claim, it wouldn't make it it wouldn't make it true. The other Masonic one that I wanted to mention along that line is that Freemasonry is a religion.
Mm.
You know, a lot of people accuse that, and I've seen this in multiple occasions. They come to me, they see my ring or they see my emblems in my car, and they'll say, "Are you a Mason?" And yeah. "But aren't you a Christian?" I'm like, yeah, okay, yeah. What's the? I don't ask what's your point anymore because I know it's a loaded question.
Nice.
So that
All
there
right.
you go. That's the bandwagon fallacy.
Great. Jason, yours is composition and division.
Composition and division. So, when you look at causality, and you say, okay, this one little piece of this argument is true, therefore you can extrapolate it out, and the end result of that extrapolation must also be true. That is, in and of itself, a logical fallacy. In that it doesn't have to go all the way to slippery slope where it just extrapolates it out to absurdity. One Masonic example that I'm almost hesitant to talk about because I think it may strike some people in the wrong way is that Masonry is an organization that takes good men and makes those good men better. Therefore, all Masons are good men who just want the best for everybody, and that's not always the case. With Masonry, we do have a lot of examples of good, wonderful men who are just trying to make themselves better. But there can be men who come into the craft for the wrong reasons, whether they're just trying to learn the secrets. We had Leo Taxel who got his first degree. You're a Mason on your first degree, and look what he ended up doing to try to destroy the name of our fraternity. So it's something that you need to be aware of, that just because this one piece of logic is true, and it may be true for a number of other parts, but it's not true for the whole. It's not necessarily true for the whole argument without said evidence.
Gotcha. Okay, Nick, we're starting to wrap up here. Yours is special pleading.
All right, so special pleading is also known as.
Please, I'm special.
Yeah, that too. And so it's kind of an idea that you're creating a justification or an exception to a general rule without actually justifying the exception. So there was one example I read where a police union was encouraging its members to avoid writing tickets, including speeding tickets, for fellow members of the union because, and they never answered the because other than to say that it was a common courtesy. So, that's one of those really naughty type of examples of what a special pleading would be. In a Masonic context, thinking with my stomach, as all past masters do, we should all go first in line because, well, we've been around longer and we just know how everything runs at the table. So if you just let me go to the table first and start eating, it will make everybody happy. And that's just how it is to be a past master. So kids, if you want to be a past master, just remember, it's all about the food.
Nice. All right, and the last one for the evening, Robert Johnson with the logical fallacy of the burden of proof.
This one was really funny, and I almost wish that Sheeple was here for it because that was my Masonic example. Burden of proof is essentially making a claim, and your argument is that because nobody can prove you wrong, you must have a valid point. A Masonic example could be that the origin of Masonry has its roots in the mystery schools which came to us from the Anunnaki, who came from Nibiru. You can't back that up with Nick with mind blown. You can't necessarily trace the origins of Masonry to any specific place, but you can make a claim as specific or vague as you want, and if there's no proof for that, or there's no expert on that, you can't. You're saying that that's the reason why you have a valid argument. I could say every day that the reason. Here's a great one. It was said that Nat King Cole smoked like 5 packs of cigarettes a day, and he said that the reason his voice was so awesome was because he smoked all those cigarettes. And when somebody asked him about it, he had said, I'm the proof, right? Like I've got Grammys. Prove me wrong. Who can tell me that isn't the case? It's putting the burden of proof onto somebody else that either A, doesn't exist, or there's no scientific evidence for it.
Mm-hmm.
Carl Sagan said, "Absence of evidence is not evidence of absence." So that's kind of what you're saying, Just because you don't have the evidence and now you've shifted it to somebody else,
Yeah,
now you don't have to prove it.
Hey, it's not my responsibility to tell you why I'm wrong. I'm telling you this is the problem. You go find the expert.
Right. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, that's rounded up. Thank you for all your patience in going through these. It was a lot of good information covered tonight. Hopefully you guys learned something. I know I did. And you can find all of these and more details at yourlogicalfallacyis.com. With that, let's start wrapping up. Jason, why don't you lead us home?
All right. Why do we talk about logic and why do we talk about logical fallacies? It all gets back to communication, which is the foundation of everything that we do as Masons and as men. So if you don't have good grammar, you can't communicate. If you aren't skilled in rhetoric, you can't persuade. And if you aren't skilled at logic, then you can't reason with that persuasion. And so that is why it's very, very important to understand all of the logical fallacies, not just from the standpoint of trying to persuade others, but to keep yourself from being persuaded incorrectly. And that's really the foundation of communication. That's why logic was its own separate liberal arts and science, or liberal art and science in ancient Greece. So it's very important that that you take a look at these and learn to be able to recognize some of them, in your day-to-day dealings. And it's applicable everywhere, whether it's in your own personal life or in Masonry in general. My name is Jason Richards. I've got a blog. It'll be updated when I'm off of shift work, which will be never. Thank you all so much for tuning in and listening to my diatribe, especially tonight. Been terrible tonight. We love you guys very much. Thank you so much. Subscribe to YouTube. Like our Facebook page. Send us tweets on Twitter. We've gotten a lot of good responses from social media tonight. So there have been a lot of people who have been engaged, and we're very excited that we were able to reach some people tonight with that. And check out our website, www.themasonicroundtable.com, and remember to spark light, because several of us have been posting our favorite Masonic books on Facebook with our bookmark and the hashtag sparklight. And it's all about communicating what has helped you in your Masonic journey and why, so that your experiences and your help in your Masonic journey can be a light and a spark to others to carry on their similar Masonic journey, and so that you all can get engaged in our conversation and start contributing to our own conversations here on TMR, and everybody can learn something and be the better for it. Great. It's a win-win. Either you spark light or you're a terrible person.
That's very logical. I like that.
Yes, absolutely. So back to you guys. Thank you.
All right, Juan.
All right. I really love this topic. This is one of those things that I'm very passionate about. Like I've said before, I started the winding stairs because I wanted to spend more time in these steps, uh, in the trivium, quadrivium, and all the other steps. Um, One thing that I want to tell the brothers that are watching this program or listening, you listen to all these different fallacies. Some of them sound a little complicated. We had to sometimes struggle to find an example to apply them. But for those of you who play chess, I love chess. When you first start learning chess, your focus is on learning how many spaces does the pawn move, and what's that special move that you can do with the king to castle. And your focus is only on that. But as you progress in the game and the more you play, the more that becomes second nature. And then you can play games that are a lot faster where you're not thinking about the tactics, you're thinking about a broader picture and the strategy. The same thing happens with logic. When you're able to have a conversation and not focus on, is he using the ad hominem or is he, you know, doing this? No, that becomes second nature when you familiarize yourself with all these fallacies. What it does, it helps you defend yourself in an argument. When someone's arguments are being fallacious and they're completely illogical, you could defend yourself and make a decision either to correct them or completely stop arguing with them because it's not worth it. There's nothing you can do about it.
Mm-hmm.
Point in case, recent post I had about tithing. Enough said. Anyway, but it's important that we learn these kinds of things. It allows us to defend ourselves from illogical arguments that are aimed to harm us or our organization. I would like for you to visit me on thewindingstairs.com, where I share a Masonic podcast. I just recently released episode 22, where I teach some very important lessons, and I hope that you go check it out. And if you're on Twitter, find me at windingstairs33. Thank you.
Thank you. Nick Johnson.
Hey, that's me. It's one of those I kind of went to school for this logical fallacy stuff, and it's always been kind of fascinating to me. I mean, it's very left brain, but also very right brain of kind of getting the creativity aspect of understanding how to frame an argument, but also understanding that fallacies aren't necessarily an evil. I know I just said that, but sometimes they actually can serve a purpose. And so I'm going to say it, and I'm going to be the only one on this whole board that's going to say it. Don't always be afraid to use one, as long as you're using it openly. And so, slippery slope arguments are very common, and they're sometimes very useful. So yes, I just dropped the mic on that one.
Wow.
So yeah, but no, I think this was a really good discussion. You can find my blog, millennialfreemason.com. You can also go to reddit.com/r/freemasonry and find us there. And also two other new subs. Well, they're not new. They've been like a year and a half, but nobody ever goes on them, and so you should. And that would be r/York and r/Scottish Rite. And hang out. Let's start adding some content and making this happen. Thanks, guys, for all the things that you do and watching this show and giving us feedback. And especially, I want to just reiterate just how pleased I am to be reading about the amount of money that Minnesota Masonic Charities has given to the University of Minnesota. In total, the amount of money that we have given to the University of Minnesota is now $125 million. So
Nice.
it's been a really good relationship between the two. So with that, thank you.
Alrighty. Robert.
Well, to kind of reiterate a little bit what Nick said, and Juan both, this was a very fun topic to go over. We got to talk about the funny side of these things, the serious side of these things. We're going to commit these logical fallacies. We probably do it every day. if you did it by mistake, it's okay. We didn't all attend the typical Grecian classes on rhetoric, logic, or the trivium. Um, but if you did it on purpose, hey, maybe you helped something happen. Maybe you proposed a logical argument, and maybe you're a lawyer. Maybe you put somebody in jail who should have been in jail. But these things, studying these things, we become better at reasoning, and we become better all-around men in understanding the way we communicate. So thanks for bearing with my horrible examples and the really good logical examples of the other members of the panel.
Not this one.
So essentially, I just wanted to say thanks for that. As soon as I get bookmarks, I will also have fun, and I'll do the Sparklight thing. This is not Sparklight. This is my Scottish Rite dues statement. So quickly, I just want to say congratulations to my wife's hairdresser. Who, her husband or boyfriend actually just got his first degree in masonry. So wanted to say congratulations on that, Jonathan Tulo. Check out WCYpodcast.com for another Masonic podcast called Whence Came You? It's my show there. If you guys were a fan of the Masonic Radio Theater, we have the next episode. I have all the parts. I'm getting ready to record that or put it all together, and that is it's an old Tyler talk. So if you guys are familiar with those, we've got a really great one coming up. Featured players in that are Jason Richards, John Ruark, Nick Johnson. They did a really good job on that, putting that together now. That should be out by the end of the month, October. Also, one last thing is we are having an event here in Chicago to raise money for the Dyslexia Center. It is a Tennessee whiskey and cigar smoker event where they're going to teach about cigars and you're going to taste different whiskeys and stuff. It's like $65. If you guys want to go, it's cdcchicago.com/events/cigar smoker. It's going to be in the Chicagoland area, so check it out. And with that, thanks, guys.
All right. I guess my final thoughts, in addition to everything else has been said, is really go back, take your time, and go to the website, read through those, try to learn more about that. I'd say practice by turning on your favorite mainstream media news outlet, or especially the ones where you have opinionated hosts, and just sit back and just see how long it takes before a logical fallacy is made, and hopefully now you're more educated to find those and be able to separate, truth and logic from logical fallacies. And then after you've been able to find those, then apply them. Not in the sense that I'm going to disagree with Nick Johnson. Just don't say, well, because of this, you're stupid. Then really learn to be more cognizant of when you may have done that in the past, as well as being able to gently correct those who are doing it without realizing they're doing it. With that, thank you very much for your support, and keep searching for more light. Have a good night.